Good morning. My name is Ritchie Coleman. I'm the Public Safety Community Coordinator for Pittsfield Township's Department of Public Safety, and we welcome you to our 2018 Scams and Fraud Impact on Vulnerable Seniors. We are challenged with our weather today, and it's a good thing that everybody who's here and those who will continue to come, and we're going to continue to move forward through our presentation as well as our welcomes. And at this time, I would like to introduce Pastor Hine from the St. Luke's Church, our host site. Thank you.
Thanks, and good morning, everybody. Glad you made it here safely. So Matt Hine, I'm one of the pastors here at St. Luke. My official title is Minister of Discipleship, and we're really excited all of you are here, participants, and those of you who are here to provide really helpful information. Story is a really important thing for us here at St. Luke, and I just want to say we're really thankful to be part of the story of Pittsfield Township and to be a partner in different ways. This is one of the ways we get to partner with the community. So thank you for being here. Blessings to you on your time, and I know it's a light crowd, but I think you'll find some really helpful pieces today. If part of your story is a need to use the bathroom, please know it's right out this door here to your right, my left. As you exit the doors, it's right there on the right side. So thank you for being here today, and we hope this facility is a blessing to your time.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I would like to also say thank you to Susan, who is a part of the administrative team here at St. Luke's, who has been extremely instrumental with assisting with planning and preparing for this event, and how important it is. At this time, I'd like to also introduce the Pittsfield Township Supervisor, being a part of the Pittsfield Township team in my role for 27 plus years after retiring in December and then coming back part-time. It's truly an honor to be a part of the team of Pittsfield Township employees and what we do with our outreach efforts, because our role in the Department of Public Safety is so important with all of our departments. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Mandy Graywell.
Thank you so much, and thank you to St. Luke's for hosting us here today. Pastor Hines talked about stories, and I'm going to take my cue from him and actually share a story, because St. Luke's holds a very special place in my heart. It is the first place that I came to when I was doing the first political campaign. It was many, many years ago. I'm not going to date myself, but the sense of feeling welcome here. I had no idea what I was doing. I knew I had to hand out literature and help candidates, and they said, go to St. Luke's, because this used to be a voting location. That's how much I'm dating myself. But they were wonderful. It was a cold day in November, and they made sure I had hot tea, hot coffee, and came out. And so it was just that sense of place and community that made me so very welcome, and I didn't know where I belonged and who I was. And that really was one of the first steps in my journey of starting public service. So this is a very special place, so thank you to St. Luke's for hosting us. And in my career as an elected official representing Pittsfield Township, coming up to 12 years, first as county commissioner and then as supervisor, I have really worked hard to extend that same sense of belonging and community to all that live here, not just in Pittsfield Township, but our region and Washtenaw County. And one of the most critical pieces of that community, of course, is our seniors. The demographics are very plain, not just for Southeast Michigan and Washtenaw County, but for the state of Michigan and for our country. We are an aging population in the United States. We have to make sure that we create safety nets, services, and resources for our folks that want to age in place, need services and resources on a day-to-day basis to live healthy, long lives. And I know that Ritchie Coleman in Pittsfield Township specifically has been a very valuable and integral part in helping us do that. So thank you, Ritchie, for putting this forum together. Thank you to all the tremendous partners that are here today across the board. And we hope that this is going to be something that's valuable to our seniors in Pittsfield Township and the region in Washtenaw County. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mandy. One of the most important roles in our department is the Director of Public Safety. And in his history of working in law enforcement, I'm sure based on our conversations, seeing the trend and challenges that we're seeing now with vulnerable seniors from when he started, as well as myself, to where we are today. It is at catastrophic levels of vulnerable seniors being impacted by scams and fraud and all types of things that we're seeing. And this is something that's been a part of our mission through the Crime Prevention Office and endorsed, and I heartedly, this is a part of, not, as I say a lot of times when people ask me, what's the passion? Crime prevention is not for sale. It is a part of what we do and why we do what we do with a passion. And this is something that's been important in my history with the township as full-time as well as now in a part-time capacity. And at this time, I'd like to introduce the Director of Public Safety, Mr. Matt Hirschberger.
Thanks, Rich. Welcome and good morning. Thanks for braving the weather today to come out for this important presentation. I appreciate Mandy Graywall being here today, all of our panelists, and everybody else, all of our other partners who are here today. And as Rich kind of indicated, we are only seeing a exponentially increasing problem with scams and frauds in our seniors in the township, across Washtenaw County in general, across really the entire country. Every time that we think we get a handle on the scam that is going on at that moment, there's a new one that comes out. Whether it's the IRS scams that go on at that time of the year, through telephone, email, they seem to find some new way of getting money and trying to take advantage of and victimize our seniors in our community. We even have, Ritchie has gotten phone calls, I get phone calls, other residents get phone calls, they fall victim to, but our seniors are especially vulnerable. They use stories of what they're doing with your family members, your grandkids, things of that nature, and they're always trying to seek money or some other advantage over our seniors. So it's something that we are constantly trying to combat on our end. But I have to be honest with you that when it comes to the issue of investigating these crimes, it is very, very difficult. They cover their tracks so well that us trying to find out who they are and bring them to justice and charge them is nearly impossible. So when Ritchie hits on the issue of crime prevention, preventing them in the first place, and making you more aware of what you're looking for so you can prevent them yourselves, so you don't become a victim, whether it's you or your parents or grandparents, that is at the forefront of everything that we're trying to do at this point. It is so much easier to prevent these types of crimes from taking place than trying to solve them after they take place. That's why we're here today. So thank you very much. We want you to spread the word. We're going to be doing more of these presentations as time goes on. I'm sure that we're going to be seeing new and ever-changing scams that take place, and we'll continue to get that information out to the public as best as we can. But the one thing that we continue to stress is when you're hearing something, when you're seeing something, and it's suspicious to you, you have to call us. Whether it's our department, Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County, call any law enforcement department, call the IRS, call the FBI. We're all on the same page. We're all working together. We will let you know when it's a scam or not. And the chances are if they're asking for money, asking for your personal information over the phone or by email, that's exactly what it is. Scam or fraud. Don't do it. Make sure you're telling your family members the same thing, especially if you have grandparents, seniors, neighbors, whatever. Make sure you're getting that word out there. So thanks for being here today. It's going to be a great presentation, as Ritchie always does, and an excellent panel, too. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I want to do just a brief overview of our agenda today. And the information for our seniors, families, caregivers, current scams and fraud impact on seniors. We have a representative here from Catholic Social Services that's going to give us an update regarding Blueprint for Aging and all of the things that we've been doing countywide with everyone who you see at the tables, the resource tables who are here. Even beyond the grant, I'm excited to be a part of this countywide team because of the camaraderie. All of our community members across the board need to know where the resources are. And as I encourage our crime prevention personnel that we work with throughout the county, not only to come back to these meetings, but also to get the resources for their specific communities. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the last 4.5 years of my family's life. As power of attorney for my 95-year-old father-in-law, the challenges that we faced were unbelievable. So we're going to do a brief overview of that because this is a part of where the questions that we'll gear up to our panelists and talk about the things that we're seeing and things that we can gear back with our families, our friends, those who need to know about the information. AARP, who is also here, Karen's going to give us a presentation on Fraud Watch and what the AARP programs are. And then our panel discussion. And our panelists that you will see that we've got listed here, we're going to move the microphone back and we'll do the Q&A from our audience, but also they will have an opportunity to share with you from their areas of expertise and their organizations what their roles are and the assistance that they can provide to you as your family members and community. One of the things I want to briefly go over with you is some of the things that we're seeing from the FTC. The Federal Trade Commission just recently produced another report, Protecting Older Americans. 2017-2018, this report that just came out, we had a chance to review the details. It's a reflection of the 2017 Sentinel report. And I would encourage, go to ftc.gov and you can get that report. They have been publishing since 2010. And it is a breakdown nationwide, but also by state. Some of the highlights from that. A couple of those, just brief comments about some of the slides and the impact on vulnerable seniors. Median loss reported by age and method of contact. Number one is telephone. Payments made, wire transfer. The scams that we're seeing, they tell you, particularly with the IRS scam, is to go withdraw money, get it on a green dot card or one of the cards, call them back, or don't hang up because the police are going to come and arrest you if you hang up. Give them the 16-digit plus the 3-digit PIN on the back. That wire transfer is a part of that process that we've seen so much of. The Sentinel report, 2017, victims of fraud and scams, credit card fraud, employment tax related, phone or utility frauds. Those are the top 3 areas. Those are the breakdowns between the last 5 years. Last 5 years. 2.7 million reports. And again, I think the biggest challenge, because when I get those calls about should I report or I'm too embarrassed to report, we need to have the numbers. We need to know, because if there's restitution that could be made and we can trace down where the individuals are coming from, that's the biggest challenge that we have from the investigative process, not just within our department, but nationwide. This national data, by age 60 to 80, that very last one, you can see the numbers are just increasingly going higher. And this is for those who are at home, those who are getting victimized by the telephone calls and the scams and the frauds that we're seeing. It is important for us to not only understand the dynamics of that, but we also see the top 3 types of identity threat. And that is, again, credit card fraud, bank and wire, and also the impact of home-related type of scams and fraud that people will just come to your door. Here's what's interesting. The Sentinel report breaks down by state the statistics for fraud and identity theft. Michigan, we're number 5 in reported cases of fraud. We are number 1 in the nation for identity theft. That's a staggering number when you think about the impact that we're seeing from the scenarios of who's falling victims and the victimization based on age, based on type. And we see that those are government documents, benefits fraud, employee or tax-related fraud, credit card fraud, phone or utility, and bank fraud. My wife and I, when we did a new lease for one of our vehicles, within 2 weeks, someone had the information. And I told the GM personnel, I went to the dealership as well as I called GM Financial. Someone just stole my information. Not only did they apply for unemployment benefits, and that letter went to my home as well as to the township. It was blocked and stopped because they had to report, yes, I was unemployed, and none of it was true. But tracing it back down, we were able to find out not only was I a victim, but many GM employees. And I told them, I said, you guys know what I do for a living, right? I'm a victim now. I can't hold back and not say that it happened and who it was. So I encourage any of the financial institutions that you work with leasing or banking, make sure that you understand the dynamics of how your information is protected. I really applaud those banking institutions that do monitoring. They do checks, they call, they find out what's going on. They ask when residents and seniors come in to get loads of cash because they're coming back 2 and 3 times to get money to put on green dot cards or to get, I've won this prize and I just got to keep sending money. These are the things that we're seeing with these types of scams and fraud. One of the other areas that I just briefly want to touch on, because this happened even after my father-in-law passed, I had someone calling me to see if they could help with him signing up for his Social Security and new Medicare card. And I told him, you got to be kidding me, right? Social Security and Medicare will not call me. Won't call him. They're going to mail this information out. The cards are going to be coming out. This is the scam that, talking with Social Security and the Medicare personnel, they are asking all of us in crime prevention, please talk to your residents, talk to your community members about these new Medicare cards. The first state it started in June was the state of Pennsylvania. Michigan was second in July, and every state, they're rolling out one at a time in order to ship these new cards out. It's taking away the Social Security number and giving a specific ID number so that our Social Security numbers at least can be protected a little bit more. But this is something that's new, that's important for all of us to be aware of. And for those who need to have information to know who to call, particularly if you've received this information, this is the numbers to call. This is the process that Medicare is asking everyone when you go to their site to make sure that you call and stay in touch or go into the local office. I know as I was preparing for this and inviting, I did a whole lot of going to that location, and it made me a little nervous because every time I went to talk to one of their staff members, I had to sign in through the kiosk with my Social Security number. I said, this is, after the second time, this is my last visit to you. I don't really feel comfortable with every time I have to come back and visit your site for a non-issue for Social Security and my benefits that I still have to sign in and put this information in the kiosk. How are you protecting this information? That was my biggest question to them. You're asking everyone who comes in to this building in Washington County and beyond to put that Social Security number in. Please, please make sure that this information is protected. In a nutshell, those are the things that we're looking at with the big picture. What I'd like to do at this time, our good friends from Catholic Social Services, I'm going to ask Leah to come up and talk with us about the Blueprint for Aging in Catholic Social Services. I truly applaud their efforts to not only continue this movement to talk about, but encourage other agencies, law enforcement, and community groups around Washington County to be a part of this initiative through Catholic Social Services.
I'm Leah Josephson. I'm the project facilitator for the Blueprint for Aging, which is a collaborative community project housed at Catholic Social Services of Washtenaw County. A lot of members of our Elder Justice Coalition, which is one of the projects of the Blueprint, are here today. And we've been appreciative of all of your help and support and collaborating with Ritchie on putting together this event. So thanks everyone for being here. We're looking forward to, in the next few months, continuing to collaborate to improve community response to elder abuse, ensuring that everyone is on the same page about protocols and ways to respond when incidents emerge. And then also, we're looking forward to engaging caregivers in new and exciting ways. So those are the things that are kind of in the pipeline, and if you're interested in getting involved, just see me afterwards, and we look forward to working together. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said a little earlier, this challenge that my family went through, let me just walk you through some of this information and the challenges that we faced. And our panelists, some of these things I'll be asking as we address those in the state of Pennsylvania, how do we address those in the state of Michigan, and the networking that is needed to facilitate working with families. My father-in-law was a World War II vet, came back from the military, worked his way up from the shipyards there in Philadelphia to the vice president of trafficking and engineering for Roman Haas. They are the inventor of plexiglass. And he was diagnosed with frontal dementia. Our family, we walked through this process as a blended family, working with Dad and all of the things that he talked with us about over the years, my wife and my sister-in-law. And Dad was adamant that being of Polish descent, the ladies can't do this. And I was like, Dad, you have two very accomplished daughters. If you don't give this to them and you won't give it to me, we might as well call probate now. And the only way I got his attention is that I actually packed our bags and went to the door, took them all out to the car, and stood there waiting, saying, make a decision. Rich, get back in here. And from that moment on, we had the opportunity to not only move forward with our family members and the grandchildren, spending time with him in the hospital, but also understanding the dynamic of what we were about to face. And some of that we weren't quite sure until we got into it. And my wife and I, my sister-in-law, we had a team approach of working not only to deal with the decision-making process, but to do a little backtracking. What we discovered when Dad fell and broke his hip in 2013. In 2010 through 2013, he had this vision. He wanted to enhance the home. And the gentleman and the groups that he had cold called, he didn't do any background checks. He was an engineer, so he was going to work it out his way. They took advantage of him with one room of $120,000. They knew he couldn't see well, and he was engineering and doing everything from his chair in the living room, and they were in the kitchen area. The things that they left undone were unbelievable. Not only did we have to turn in the individuals to the state of Pennsylvania licensing offices for everything that they did not do, because they pulled no permits for running electrical, installing, and doing lighting. They did so much without pulling one permit. We could have had a major fire and catastrophic event in that home. We discovered also that our house cleaner, friend of the family, was also now taking care of his finances in addition to working on her green card. Nice person, but as we discovered, she was taking advantage of him as well. When he fell and broke his hip, we got the call because he didn't want to call 911. So they pulled him. She assisted with pulling him down a flight of stairs to the living room, which enhanced the several breaks that we discovered he had in his hip. In May of 2014, I was able to get that power of attorney with our attorney that we use, and I knew of elder law. So we searched elder law in the state of Pennsylvania, and we found a fantastic attorney that worked with us. We were able to put in place the power of attorney. We did eventually find the will that at that point that we found that Dad's advanced dementia, that we could not make any changes. But this was one of the challenges that we had from 2014 through 2017. 3 live-in care formats from 8 hours, 12 hours, 16 to 24 hours. Home visit by the physicians. Live-in care, in our case, out of state. We were at a disadvantage. Our oversight of personnel on the property, items in the home being stolen. Our relationship with caregivers and physicians was always a challenge. All 3 of us were calling to 24 hours a day just to make sure we knew what was going on in the home. The challenges of activities of daily living, meals, shopping, cleaning, Agency follow-up on concerns raised by the care being provided. We also had to make unannounced visits to check on Dad and the home. At every one of those, it was not fun. Medical, retiree, and Medicare. These three areas. For me, after I got home from work, from 4:30 to maybe 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock every night, I was pouring through the mail that was coming in, checking and doing the follow-up with our health insurance plans. And unfortunately, in the retiree process, the company Dad worked for was sold twice during the time that we were taking care of him. And it was awfully scary to know that, are you going to terminate the retiree health insurance? And both of those times, they were continued on, but the booklets and information and resubmitting P.O.A. information, all those documents that I needed to resubmit, I prayed every night, is this going to work? And the last thing we need now is a surprise of no health insurance and being cut off from the plans. But we were very fortunate that each one of those times of companies maintained those benefits. Medicare, all of the billing, reviewed it to assure that the deductibles were correct, that we were not being overcharged or fraud, that we were able to see quite a few charges that were totally inaccurate. So we not only had to submit forms to Medicare to announce these charges are inaccurate, we were not even in this facility. This is inappropriate charge. Please investigate. The paperwork that we had to follow through for Medicare on suspicious charges was a challenge. The other one that was a big one for us was a reverse mortgage. We had promised Dad we'd keep him at home as long as we could. So many pros and cons. As long as I've been doing this, and I knew that, and it was a challenge along the way. The first company that we worked with, because Dad had been following this, we wanted to work with this particular company. As it turns out, 7 months later, I wound up having to terminate that relationship to get the HUD number because it just never ended with more requests for paperwork, physician reports that weren't needed, one thing after another. But one of the things that I do applaud with this process is that HUD is involved. HUD does a one-on-one counseling with everyone who is the homeowner, who is in charge of a deed or has legal authority. And you must read the booklet and the questions that they ask you. At the end of my interview with her, I told her where I worked. And she says, I've never had anybody ask me that many questions about what HUD does on your behalf because you're working with a third-party vendor. I needed to know that we were going to be protected, but also what's the process? So meticulously every month I had to submit to that company, Dad is still at home. Here's a company that is still there with him because once no one is living in the home, that's when the reverse mortgage ends. And you have to make a decision to either give the property back to the lender based on what you borrowed or pay that back by selling the home. Our choice was to sell the home, and we were fortunate to not only sell the home, but take care of all of his expenses that were needed to take care of him in his VA care. It was a challenge, but it's something that it's not for everybody. It truly isn't for everybody. But one of the things that was important for us was our VA benefits. As a World War II U.S. Army captain, Dad was on the front line with Eisenhower. And some of the stories and things that he shared with us about his time in the military during that era, some of it was like, did that really happen? Could that have gone on? Until we were clearing the house and found a 30-gallon tub with all of his military private information, maps of front lines, the booklets that he had, German magazines, because he gave us details about a story of being dressed as a female, and they would take their dog tags, and they would go in to do reconnaissance. But if they took the dog tags, we don't know who you are. You're not connected to the military. Everything that he had in that tub, we're working now with the military museums and the science areas, because some of the maps and things that we have in our possession, they currently do not have in some of the military historical locations. And we're going to donate those. But it was an eye-opener to see that some of those stories that he was telling us, they were actually accurate. The 3 trips that I had to make to get him the VA benefits, a little bit earth-shattering, and I understand the challenge now more than ever before of what our VA hospitals are challenged with, as well as our vets from these multiple theaters of war coming back to get services. The 3 trips that I had to make, the first 2 were canceled after waiting in the lobby, hiring a transport to take Dad in the wheelchair in the lobby for 3.5 hours both times, to the point I couldn't keep him there. And we were told, he can't see you today, even though he knew we had made this appointment and I was coming in, flying in or driving in to come for that specific appointment. The 3rd time when they said he can't see you, I said, I'm not leaving. He's going to have to see me today. I need to see, if not him, somebody else that can help take care of this situation, because this is now costing me, but also the stress on him having to come back and forth. An hour and a half later, this is the 4th hour there in the waiting room, when the social worker asked me to come down, I actually took Dad home and came back. When he told me that he had 10,000 vets in his caseload, I just kind of looked at him in just bewilderment. I'm not sure how you can do that. I said, we're one of 10,000 that you're working to take care of? He said, it just doesn't end. We don't have enough employees. The vet's not working adequately to manage what we're seeing now with those who need services. After that 7.5 months process, we also were able to get the VA financial benefit, which was a lifesaver. It not only helped with us being able to take care of him at home, but also is in care at the VA nursing home. The Delaware Valley VA nursing home, the staff there, it was a 1-year wait after filling out all the applications to get into that nursing home. 1/2 mile from his home. It was a challenge the day that we took him. That will be etched in infamy in my memory of the challenges that we had that day, because he didn't want to go, even though he knew it, that he couldn't be at home any longer. The staff were amazing at the nursing home. They did a fantastic job with not only taking care of him, but also all of the things that we needed to go through. And when he was hospitalized, and we were told that the procedure needed to drain fluid from his lungs, that would be at 95, catastrophic. And we went from palliative care to hospice care there at the VA. But one of the most important things that I needed to make sure that I was aware of, the day of his passing, my P.O.A. authority ended. It was amazing how it all worked out, but the challenges that moved forward from that. So one of the things for me that was the most important, not only with tracing down all of the things that we had to do for him, but the lessons learned. And that was a wake-up call from me, not only to help take care of my family and my immediate family, but to share this experience through workshops like this and the outreach to our community and with all of our caregivers, how much we need to make sure families need to know how to prepare. That table was one of many that I had to spread out every time I went to the home. All of the billing, all of the insurance papers, the medications, home care, all of the things that we had to deal with. The boxes of paperwork, that's 5 of them there, but there are actually 20 boxes of information that we had to call and assemble with moving everything out of the home. At last picture to the left, Belgian blocks. 1956, the home was built. Dad believed that those Belgian blocks were worth $100,000. I couldn't give those Belgian blocks away. And he was adamant about that. He argued every time, those blocks are worth thousands, Rich, sell them. No. Everybody that I brought in, nope, can't use them. They've got tar on them from a previous pull. I had to hire a company, a construction company, to come in and haul over 5,000 Belgian blocks away. The home purchasers didn't want them. I was just like, okay, this is just amazing. But in his mind, he actually had the value of those blocks on his spreadsheet and the depreciation. And I was like, okay, Dad. First time I saw it, I just couldn't believe it. But then knowing that I couldn't sell those blocks, but in his mind, that was a part of the wealth of the home and the value of the home. But to this day, it was a learning experience, but also quite the challenge that we had to make our way through that. And we're still there. We're still working our way through the process, because one of the things Dad did in his will in 1965, my children, he did not name his children in his will. We still wound up going to probate. We're still finalizing all of the paperwork because he did not name the children in his will. So all of those things that are important for our families when you are creating your wills and documents, these little things like this, still at the end, have a significant impact. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we are and things that I have gone through and how important that this role is. And at this time, I would like to introduce Karen from the AARP, who's going to do a presentation for us on Fraud Watch.
Well, good. It's still morning, right? Good morning. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. I'm Karen Kefenteris. I'm with AARP Michigan. My title is Associate State Director, but it really should be Jack of all trades. I do a lot of different things in my job. One of them is I work with our fraud. I do some of our fraud work. And today I'm here to talk with you about our Fraud Watch Network. Give you a Fraud Watch Network presentation. So what is the AARP Fraud Watch Network? It is actually a network. It's an online-based network that anybody can take part in. The goal is to give you resources, be able to spot and avoid things like identity theft and other types of fraud to protect yourself and your family. So I told Rich I had to use notes today because I tend to go off script and start telling those stories. And I also tend to have a very interactive presentation, which I probably won't have today because of the time. This is normally a 2-hour presentation, and I'm trying to condense it down into an hour. All right. So how many of you have been approached with a fraudulent offer? All right. And how many of you either have been or know someone who's been a victim of identity theft? Yep, that's about right. About half of people. So how many people every year have their identity stolen? This is information from 2 years ago, so those numbers are a little different. Who thinks it's 6.5 million? Who thinks it's 15.4 million? Who thinks it's 21.4 million? It's actually 15.4 million 2 years ago. Not sure what today's number is. And how much do you think was stolen 2 years ago through identity theft? Someone want to raise their hand, shout out a number? Correct. What is identity theft? Identity theft is when someone steals your personal information, like your name, your social security number, your Medicare number, which is a number now, not your social security number, your bank account information, or other personal information in order to commit fraud or other crimes. So this can include opening credit cards in your name, racking up thousands of dollars in charges that you are responsible for. So what is the secret to these cons in defrauding people? And it is something called the ether, getting people in a heightened emotional state so that they don't make good decisions. And it's, they dangle things like unlimited wealth, and they get people excited about things. They push people into making decisions without thinking about them. So what are some of the different ways that they try to con you out of your money? Phantom riches, as we talked about, the lottery, the gold coins that are going to be worth tons of money because the economy is going in such a way that gold's going to double in the next couple of years. Phantom riches are something you want, but you can't have. They're designed to arouse get you aroused and get you into that ether. Profiling. So what is profiling? Scammers develop a a profile of the victim by asking questions about themselves. And they're just being friendly, just talking. How many people have you run into who are they're lonely and they just want to talk? So you call them up, you get them talking, you find out, they have a child with mental illness, they lost a brother in the Vietnam War. They figure out what the trigger is, and they learn how to push it. So Steve, one of the cons described it as, what I try to do is have the victim pick it up on the phone, trying to find out what their emotional Achilles heel is. Once I do, it enables me to use it against them. All right, scarcity. How many times have you seen that stores going out of business forever, or there's a sale every other week? The scarcity piece feeds into our fear of not having enough food or water. So things like, we only have 4 gold coins left, or there's only, you only have a certain amount of time. There's I won't say what TV thing is, but there's always, everything is like, you've got 3 minutes left and we only have a certain number. So they're pushing you to make that decision now, not to sit and think about that decision before you do it. Source credibility. We're going to see a source credibility thing in just a second. But, someone who seems like, they have, like this here, I'm a senior vice president with an MBA, certified to deal with seniors. So you think they're a good guy. They could be someone totally wanting to scam you. So let's talk about some of the prevention strategies. What cons agree on is that victims get excited easily. They can get people under the ether. They don't consider why it's a scam. They don't ask questions. And they don't read information. So obviously, don't make decisions in a heightened emotional state. Ask more questions than you answer. Read about the product before you buy it. Don't make a quick decision. Don't let the salesperson control you. You should control the conversation. And develop a refusal script. So I have to say that I know we don't have a lot of seniors in the audience today, but seniors are particularly vulnerable. My mother, when she retired, was 70. She's now 92. She makes decisions today that she would never have made even 10 years ago, probably. For example, she taught me when I was young and just buying my first house, if you have anyone come over to do work, you never pay them up front. So she tells me about 2 years ago, she's having her roof replaced. And this is going on. I'll go over there and tarps over the roof like all summer long, nothing's happening. And she said, yeah, the guy just disappeared. And I said, well, why don't you get somebody else? Well, I've already paid him. I said, Mom, what are you talking about? You already paid him. Well, he wanted his money up front. I said, Mom, you're the one who told me never to. I know, but he insisted that I pay him the full amount up front. So the guy ripped off a whole bunch of shingles and a bunch of stuff and disappeared. At 90, she did something that she wouldn't have done 10 years earlier. And there's a vulnerability at talking to her that she feels at 90 or maybe 85 that she didn't feel before. All right, so things to keep yourself safe. Protect your Social Security number and personal information. Does anybody here carry their Social Security card in their wallet? I discovered one of my interns still carries his Social Security card. I said, don't do that. Monitor your bills and financial accounts and watch over your credit reports. You can get an annual credit report for free. Protect your PINs and passwords. Today we have to have a password and a PIN or a username for everything. And it's tough because you got 30 or 40 of those out there and you don't want your bank account to be the same one as logging onto your computer at home. How do you keep those How do you have a strong password, and how do you keep them safe? It's very tough. You can consider one of those password keepers. It's like an app. You definitely want to make sure that you get a reputable one. We don't have one that we recommend, but I wouldn't get a free one because I think you get what you pay for there. We have, before you leave, we have our Con Artist Playbook, which has a lot of this information in it, and all the numbers and things that are up on the screen there. Protect your online information, protect your mail. So one of the slides that I took out because of time was a video of Alice talking about something called mailboxing, where usually they work as a team of two, and they drive around, they look for mailboxes, the red flag's up, or there's mail sticking out of it. They stop by, they grab your mail, and they take it with them. So what's on that mail, right? If it's outgoing check, then they have your bank routing number. If it's incoming stuff, it can be all kinds of stuff. It could be information from your medical, like your insurer, or things like that. And it could have all kinds of information on it. Frank Abagnale, as I mentioned before, helped create the Fraud Watch program that we have. And we brought him to Michigan, and he did a presentation for about 500 people about 2 years ago. And he talked about the fact that all you need is a name, an address, and one other piece of information, he said, and he could go through and he could completely take everything. He could find all the rest of it. So he said something that was shocking to me, which was shred every piece of information that has your name and your address on it. So it's his suggestion. All right. Okay. So don't use a password. We suggest you use a passphrase, and I'm going to show you how to make one. So here is the Nike tag line, just do it. So how do you make a passphrase out of that? Remove the spaces, change all the O's to zeros, and the ones to exclamation marks, or the I's to ones. Add an exclamation mark, and then add a date that is meaningful to you. Your kid's birth date, your wedding date, something like that. The month on the front and the day on the back. And you get something that's going to be much harder to break than your kids' names or your animals' names. The Beatles is another example. So you end up with the one on the bottom that looks very difficult to break. So some of the things that you can do is sign up for the Do Not Call registry. You have to do this every 5 years or your name comes off of it. They also now have where you can put your cell phone on there. And it does work because I put my cell phone on there and stopped getting all those calls. Because I was getting that Jamaica lottery call, and I was getting those strange calls. So that it does help. Double check references. Don't just check references, double check references. One of the things that happens out there is the charity frauds. And every time we have a disaster, all these charity frauds pop up. So you can verify the charities by going to CharityWatch.org or Charity Navigator. The other things that are coming up, we have the holidays coming up. All kinds of different scams and things pop up at the holidays. All right, online and cyber scams are are just exploding these days. Anybody an AARP member here? Did you get the bulletin with the dark web information? Fascinating. I have copies over there if anyone wants to pick it up. Talks about how the crooks buy and sell our private information and data on this dark web, that where we know the web. This is a whole different part of the web. And there's a big piece in here about how you can protect yourself. It's also online at our Fraud Watch Network page. Let's see. All right, so according to the FBI, in 2014, there were over 270,000 fraud complaints with a total loss of about $800 million. And today, that number has gone way through the roof, mainly because of cybercrime. What percentage of people don't use a passcode on their smartphones? And you've already seen the answer is 26%. You should. My husband didn't. We went to Greece this summer and he lost his cell phone. And the worst part about it was, he didn't do all that much. He's kind of old school, doesn't do all that much on his cell phone. But he had pictures, or he had a picture of both of our kids' passports on that. So we got them both, one of those things that monitor all of your stuff, because someone has that, they have everything. Our kids could be in serious trouble. Okay, maybe I'm just trying to go too fast. Point it that way, okay. All right, so another risk, and probably all of you do this, is putting on the appropriate protection on our computers to keep, hackers and spyware and viruses away. So what are some of the schemes that are out there? Public Wi-Fi scams, the man in the middle. There's your public Wi-Fi. There's somebody else out there with a router. And they connect, if you don't have your phone or your computer or whatever you're using well protected, they just connect through them to the Wi-Fi. They're watching your entire conversation or everything that you do. That's why you should never do anything financial on public Wi-Fi. They'll just sit there and watch all your passwords and watch your, grab your credit card numbers. So you never want to do that. And not just that, but they can alter stuff. If they then give your banking information, they can reroute things so that funds can go into their accounts. If they get their credit card information, you're going to be getting some serious bills probably. There's also the evil twin Wi-Fi. You have a Wi-Fi account, you're staying in a hotel and you want to use the Wi-Fi, they give you the code and everything, but there's a duplicate Wi-Fi that looks just like the hotel Wi-Fi with maybe one letter off or one thing off, and you're on somebody else's actual Wi-Fi. And since you're on theirs, you're unaware that anything that you go to on that, they have all that information. If you go and you log into anything, they have your passwords. And how many of you heard of I can't remember what it's called, but where like hospitals are hijacked, they like crack in, they take over and they have like patient data or patient information, and they want you to pay for them to release it. So we actually had someone in our office who was contacted and said, I have your passwords to this, this, and this, and he gave them to him. And they were actually his passwords to these various accounts. So he had been something like this man in the middle or the evil twin or something had happened that he was unaware of. And they wanted, they were trying to get him to give them thousands of dollars. And he called the police, which was a good thing, and then called all these different companies and changed accounts and did things like that. What is war driving? So war driving is when, just kind of what it sounds like, someone's driving around, and instead of sitting in the coffee shop with you, they're driving around with the router. They can, looking for smartphones or other devices that are not protected, and doing the exact same thing, getting involved in whatever you're doing, getting those passwords, getting all that. So, obviously, don't access any information sensitive information over public Wi-Fi. Verify that it's actually the right Wi-Fi if you're going to get on it. And secure your home Wi-Fi, because people can hack into your home Wi-Fi. You know, they have the Ring doorbell and these various security systems now that all work over the internet. Those are all vulnerable. Those are all vulnerable to being hacked. And so keep that in mind when you start doing the whole smart home piece, is those are all vulnerable, all of them. All right, who knows what phishing is? Yep, it's a cyber type thing where people are looking to try to get you to do something, like click on a link. You might get an email or a text, and it looks like it comes from somebody you know, has a link in it. You click on that link, and it takes you somewhere that looks legitimate, like your bank. And they want you to, they're just verifying something, and they want you to put in your, sign into your account. But it's not actually your bank. So now they have your username and password for your bank account. Or it can take you to, they can have viruses on there, Trojan horses on there. You click on the link, and your computer or your phone is infected. So things that you should look for when you in phishing scams: misspellings, things like that. Things like, is it really a person you know, or does it look like a name that's similar to someone you know, and you just read it really quickly and thought it was Bob Smith, and it's really Bob Smith with an E on the end, yeah? Yep, the comment was that she read somewhere recently that 65% of all computers have already been hacked. So they already probably have some sort of Trojan horse or some sort of something on them from having someone getting into them. I would believe that. Anyways, so if you get messages from people you don't know, obviously, don't open them. If you get something with someone you think you know, but it's a strange like reline, or the message line is odd, or there's misspellings in the message line, or if you open an email and the punctuation's off, or things just don't look right, close it and start a new email and say, hey, did you email me? Because that's happened to me before, where I've gotten emails and I'm thinking, this looks, I got actually from my physical therapist, I got this really strange email one day, and so I called the office, and I said, I think your system's been hacked. I think that, Jill, I got this email from Jill, and it looked really like it wasn't real. And they said, no, it's real. It's about the 50th call we've gotten this morning. So I said, well, then you need to change that message, because the email, because doesn't work well. One of the things, if you, the HTTPS, they got a misspelling up there. The S on the end means it's a secure network. So you're somewhat safer being on those networks. But the spyware, that is probably when you say that most computers have been hacked, that's probably what's on there, is spyware, where they're trying to catch your passwords and all that kind of stuff. So how do you protect yourself from phishing? Monitor your accounts, secure your passwords, protect your computer, control where you surf. Right? Surfing is one of the ways that most computers get infected. Watch for fake connections, what we talked about, and be aware. Just being aware can help you a lot. Thank you, Rich. All right, we're going to talk just for a minute about medical identity theft. Rich talked a little bit about it earlier. So this is something that's really growing. the medical identity theft. On the dark web, a social security number goes for $1 or $2. On the dark web, medical ID information goes for $60 or $70. So it's really in high demand. And basically they take your health insurance number, your Medicare number, they go see a doctor, they pose as you to get medical attention, medical help, get prescriptions, or file claims with your insurance provider. So this can have a huge impact. It can have a huge financial impact for you, but it also can mean that you can't get health, you get refused services. So how do you find out whether, how do you discover you've been a victim of medical insurance fraud? You look on your bills for services that you didn't get or from doctors that you've never seen. You get debt collectors calling you, which I actually had with my physical therapy people the other day. You get a notice that you've reached your benefit limit, or you get denied insurance or services. All right, how is your identity, medical identity, stolen? So data breaches at hospitals or medical centers. Simple things like dumpster diving, which is the reason why you should shred all of your medical stuff that you are getting rid of. Not just, I said earlier about the name and address, but anything that has your medical ID number on it, you want to make sure you shred. Anything that has your social security number, anything that has your Medicare number on it, you want to shred. Phishing is a big way that they get your medical identity stolen. And offers of free medical services. So it's one thing for University of Michigan Medical Center I can't remember what you guys are called, but to offer free blood pressure checks or free diabetes checks. But it's another thing to go somewhere where it's just sort of a health fair and there's no real identity there, but what they want is, they're asking for, we need your insurance information. Well, it's free. Why do I need my insurance information? Or they want your name and your address and your social security number. People give it to them. So don't do that. There's actually been recently, on I think it was 60 Minutes recently, there was a story about people who were posing as they were from like your life insurance company, and they would call up, they would say, we're offering this life insurance, and they would say, yes, I want to get this life insurance. You have to have that pre-physical type thing, right? So they would send somebody into your home, they would actually do the whole physical, just like they were actually real people doing that kind of thing, and then they ask you for all your insurance information. And they'd walk away with all your information, your social security number, your birth date, your insurance information. So you don't want to give them anything that anything like that. So there are some of the impacts can be, yeah. So,
targeted as it relates to seniors, and as we age, and technology, technology is moving so very, very fast that even as a AARP member, I can't catch up with it. My grandchildren have to help me with it, but I understand my mother's age, the 80s, the 90s, the reality is not there. And so
Right.
for parents or anyone else is not going to allow any help. Can we speak to that in trying to protect someone who won't allow anybody to help?
I think for someone like that, the best thing that you can do if they're, like my mother, who I will say it nicely is feisty and fiercely independent and really worried about losing her independence, which keeps her from kind of keeps you at bay. I know how to do that, even though she might not, is to get, if you're talking about the computer, is to get the best possible security software you can on their computer.
This is the thing. You can't even, if they're not going to allow you must be able to
Then there's nothing you can do then. The question was, how do you help protect an older family member, 80s and 90s, or any family member who refuses help with staying secure online? Correct me if I'm wrong, but staying secure online, and when they really don't know how to do it and can't do it, how do you help them?
That's a challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge. People are, unless they're deemed incompetent, are able to make their own decisions. And the best we can do is try to help them.
What we can also do, because some of these questions, as we get closer to the panel discussion, and we'll have everybody that will be
Yes.
able to ask those questions that are being raised currently. These are really good questions that will lead right into the panel discussion. So if we could do this, we could let her finish. She's almost done. And
Yep.
then we'll move right to the panel. But hold that great question, because that right there is at the core of everything that we've been focusing on. If I can just do this interjection. Because that's what I had to experience with Dad.
Yes.
He didn't want to let go of anything. I want to control it, wouldn't let anybody in. And as I said earlier, until we geared up to walk out of the home and say, okay, let's just turn it all over to probate. That was the only way we could get his attention. But that is at the core of every family's tough decision. When do you get someone help who doesn't want to get help? And I can still do it on my own, but we can see what's going on around us. So let's come back to that question, those two questions that we had here. We'll come back to those.
Okay, we're talking about the impacts of medical ID thefts. So some of that is things like your medical records could get tainted. So your blood type could get changed. So if you're needing to have blood sometime, they could give you the wrong type of blood, although hopefully at the hospital they would check that. But you could get a medication that you're allergic to if it's been changed, if your medical records have been changed, and then all the bills and things. So if your medical ID information is stolen, generally if it's a hospital or a clinic type setting, they're going to provide you with free credit monitoring. Contact your insurance provider immediately, file a police report, request your medical records from your, so that you can make sure that the information is correct. If it's Medicare, make sure you report it, like Rich talked about them doing. There is a Medicare hotline to report that information. So we do have, as talked about, the Fraud Watch Network, which is actually an online network that we have. It sends you out, and this is kind of how I met Rich. He kind of contacted me and said, oh my God, I love this Fraud Watch Network stuff. They send me updates every 2 weeks, the new scams that are happening and what to watch out for. You can report things happening in your area, in your state, or you can go on here and type in your zip code and find out things that other people are reporting happening in your area. This was from several years ago, but there was a fraud alert from Michigan from Shooty had put on, had put on a ransomware scam and a foreclosure scam that was going on at that point. These change, they're updated all the time, and Rich can talk more about that because he's really involved in that, so, or takes advantage of that. And on the, if you pick this book up, we actually have an 800 number that if you or someone you know has been a victim of fraud can call, and there's a live person to talk you through and walk you through what steps to take to handle that fraud. And I am going to say I'm done, Rich.
Thank you so much, Karen. An applause there. Thank you so much. We're going to have our panelists come up to the table now. We have your names by each of those, and we're going to start with having our panelists talk with us about their specific roles and their organizations. And as we are preparing for our personnel who are coming up, those great questions are perfect lead-ins to where we're at now with what are our next moves and how do we go about making sure that we help those family members who sometimes don't want help. We see that. We know that it's very real. We know that this is going to be a challenge across the board. I'm going to turn these microphones on for our guests. And I am going to provide an opportunity for the individuals who are here with us now to share with us their areas of expertise. And I am going to ask Mr. Ron Tatro from Elder Law to start. And then after he's completed, then we're going to start and come back this way so that we can have input and information from each one of them with their areas of expertise.
Well, good morning. First of all, thank you for coming out. It's always nice to see people out here, and it's nice to see people that are engaged. As Rich said, my name is Ron Tatro, and I actually wear two hats. I am the Vice President of Elder Law of Michigan, which is a statewide organization based in Lansing. We provide a variety of services to seniors, including free legal services. The other hat that I wear these days is that I'm the State Director of the Michigan Elder Justice Coordinating Council. And that's a statewide organization that is designed to really serve as a voice for elder abuse victims throughout the state in many, many different areas. As it relates to frauds and scams, from the council side, we provide very limited services to seniors these days in the sense of actually reaching out to them and having one-on-one. Our focus these days is really to try to get ahead of the curve and try to figure out academically through researching with a number of academic institutions how seniors go about making decisions these days. And trying to understand, like Karen's mom and a whole host of other people, about what feeds into that. So that's what we focus on.
There's a microphone at each table there. There we go.
Hello, my name is Megan. I work for DFCU Financial Credit Union. Fraud and watching out for the impacts on our members is our main focus. So when a member comes in and they're performing a transaction that is out of the norm of their general financial history with us, we're going to ask them questions. If this is a large withdrawal, we want to know, what is this going to be used for? We're asking questions to determine if this could be a potential scam. If they're bringing in a large check that is unusual and they say they need cash out of it right away, we're going to ask, where did you get this check from? We train all of our frontline staff to see fraudulent checks, know what they're looking for. We also train them to avoid phishing emails. We know that if we click on a link that is from a phishing email, that puts our data at reach, which is our members' data. So we do a lot of in-depth prevention matters at the credit union. Now, once fraud may have occurred or you may have been a victim of a scam, we have something called an identity theft kit. We will isolate the affected accounts, get them your online access shut down temporarily, open new accounts for you, and that way, once we have all of your direct deposits and automatic payments transferred over, close down the affected accounts so that your financial information stays secure. Then your online access is reinstituted so that you can go ahead as usual again. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jane Bassett with Bassett Law. My care manager, Karen Brewer, is with us today. We provide full-range legal services for all elder issues, elder and disability issues. So anything from your basic estate planning to helping people who have a family member who is being stubborn and not wanting help. Sometimes we need to bring in our care manager to help work them through that. Sometimes we need to take stronger action and go to court. We help people who have been the victims of financial exploitation or elder abuse. We review nursing home admissions contracts to make sure that they're being fair with people. The reverse mortgages, we've been involved with that with clients. Essentially anything that someone would face in the process of aging or facing a disability. We also provide fiduciary services for people, do veterans benefits, Medicaid benefits, the full range of anything that anyone would need. Our office is located just a couple doors down on Hogback, and we're here to help.
I'm actually going to stand up because I tend to have a tiny voice and I just wanted to carry a little bit. My name is Rashana Davis. I work for the Department of Health and Human Services, which is a state agency. It's a state of Michigan agency. And I am an adult protective services investigator. Prior to this, I was a children's protective service investigator for about a decade. So I've been working kind of in that field for a very long time. And I guess probably the assumption is that the difference between the two pretty much is just the age, which is kind of true with a little bit of a caveat. So obviously for child protection, any child under the age of 18 is considered, the population for that. And with adults, it's 18 and above. But there also is a little bit of an addition to that in that there has to be something what we call a vulnerability. So cognitive impairment, developmental disability, it can be mental illness. And then the kind of all-encompassing one, which is the one we usually see, is considered is advanced age, which I know probably you're thinking, okay, what is considered advanced age? And honestly, there's no answer. We have a very wonderful group of people in Lansing that field all of our complaints that come in, called central intake, and they are the ones that make the determination of what gets signed for investigation. So we're dealing with, obviously, any type of physical abuse, physical neglect, and this can also be self-neglect, which is a very common thing. But part of that abuse and neglect can be financial. So I think sometimes we get a little more of the shaky areas made where it's not as criminal as some stranger taking advantage of someone. Sometimes it's the people that you know and love. And so to answer the woman's question over here really briefly, when you have somebody that's not willing to let you in or you're not really sure what's going on, the solution to that really is to contact us. And you can do that just by making a complaint to Central Intake. The number is, I'm going to do it for the recording, is 855-444-3911, and you just explain what's going on, and they'll make the decision to sign it for intake, and we can come out and intervene. Now, they also don't like letting us in, but we gather information from everyone, so friends, family, anybody involved, and we can do as little as contact the bank, try to kind of figure out what's going on, all the way up to if this person is at a state where they're not able to make their own decisions, we can intercede with guardianship. If they have assets to protect, conservatorship, those are extreme examples, but those are kind of some of the things that we provide and do. So that's kind of what you want to do if you have a uncooperative individual. And also, you'll be surprised. I mean, not everybody has a wonderful son-in-law like Officer Coleman. There are people just who don't have anyone. So it's important, that's most of what the population that we deal with is, people who don't have relatives, never were married, or have people that are deceased, and there's really nobody to look out and take care of them. So occasionally they'll be working with somebody or have an agency where they see something like that, and the appropriate thing to do in that case is to contact us. So just wanted to answer your question for you.
I'm Brian Mackey from the prosecutor's office in the county. We have the responsibility of reviewing requests for charges, and thank you. And also when we choose a case, we know it should be prosecuted. We handle all prosecutions of state law violation, basically. The Attorney General may handle, and I believe at the moment they have one case in Washtenaw County out of the thousands of cases that we have. And I'm sorry I didn't thank you yet, Rich. You are a treasure. I've known Rich for many years. It's great work that he does. I'm glad that this work is being done around the state. It's a great service of Pittsfield Township to have Rich doing crime prevention. At the office, and I've worked there for quite a while, actually, seen many, many cases of various kinds, some of which may not look like on their face crimes against the elderly, all the things you've heard about and more, and some things that are borderline criminal, some of the religious scams. Especially older religious people take at face value what they hear from somebody who claims to be a minister from a church. Some of you may remember the name Tony Alamo. He used to write from a prison in Texas. He called himself a minister. He asked people to send him money. People did send him money. He didn't lie about where he was. He later got out of prison and went back for the rest of his life when he married an 8-year-old. But this is a man who received a lot of money. So we get that. We get a lot of cases, we don't get enough. There should be more. There should be more reporting. It's a part of the education process of the general public and especially people who are potential victims. And we are all potential victims. When it comes to fraud, other than what you've heard already, it's what you heard from Adult Protective Services. It's family members that we get most of the time. But if you will permit me to just state an opinion here, I do what Karen did sometimes with surveys, go out people, and my surveys often involve, what do you think the penalty is? So for instance, what kind of a prison sentence do you think people get for embezzling $768,000 from a nonprofit? What if you embezzle $750,000 from a public library? How much time do you get in prison? How much time do you get in prison for stealing or manufacturing your own credit cards and misusing them to steal money? And the answer is always 0. Embezzling almost $1 million, you don't go to prison, you don't go to jail. So while we're proud in Michigan that we lock up the right people in prison, prison population's gone way down. It's down to about 38,000 people now. 74% are violent offenders. And we make that decision as a society, what we think should happen to people. But you are a scammer. Part of your calculation is nothing bad is going to happen to me. If you're caught, you will be put on probation if you're convicted, and you will be ordered to pay restitution, and you will not have to pay restitution. That's something prosecutors are working on with the judges across the state. But I think we should consider that maybe there should be a penalty for those rare people who are caught. Anonymity, technology makes it possible to defraud from across the sea, from states away. And there's not the resources to get these people. When somebody is convicted, maybe we should think that something should happen to them.
My name is Louise Verbecki, and I am the long-term care ombudsman for Washtenaw County. I cover the nursing homes, homes for the aged, adult foster care homes, and assisted living facilities in Washtenaw County. And I don't see the type of fraud that most of these people up here see. The type of fraud that I see is usually done by either a family member or the person who is that person's representative, or sometimes it's the facilities themselves who are defrauding the residents, okay? So I'm here if anybody has any questions for me.
Let's do this now. With those questions that have been raised, some from the audience members, several that have left, the big scope of a whole lot of information that we heard today from myself and from each one of the panelists, as well as from the AARP. And we know that this vulnerable senior scenario is not going to go away. And this is something that, with all of these mechanisms that are in place, how do we help those, particularly with your question, who don't want to get help, who may fall victim and prey to something they've received in the mail or a phone call or a recommendation? One of the things that I did ask two of our speakers to address when we talk about wills, we talk about the plans that are in place that each one of us need to have with directives about our care and our family members' care. We're one of 10 states with the Lady Bird deed format. Just like reverse mortgages, there's pros and there's cons. It's good for some and it's not good for others. Jane and I were talking about this, and at times, and I know that you have too, as well as with Ron right here, some people, reverse mortgage is not right for you. If you don't have all of the particulars to know about your home and the fear of the huge contract like that and commitment. But could you share with us, Ron, about the Lady Bird deed format, as well as Jane, if you could chime in? Because this is something new that we're seeing a lot of online. We're hearing a lot about these 10 states, and Michigan is one of those 10 states. Please address that.
So let me always start with a disclaimer. First of all, this is not a legal presentation, and we're not giving you legal advice. You know, some things to think about, and as we all get older, and certainly I find myself in the same boat, is I begin to think about where I want my wishes and my desires and my goals to be when I get to the end of my life. And I think we would all agree that probably we would like to exit this life with respect and dignity to us, and a comfort level of knowing that, in fact, there are processes in place to ensure that we can obtain those goals for us. There's a lot of legal documents out there, and Jane can speak to them better than I can, about the processes for going, but Rich asked specifically about something called the Lady Bird deed, which technically is an enhanced life estate deed. And the story is, and we're really not sure if it's true or not, that it actually came when President Johnson actually conveyed some property to his wife, and that's where the term Lady Bird deed came from. But basically, it is a document that if you own property, and for most of us that's our home, that in fact you can convey an interest in that to people other than perhaps your spouse. So the most common example is that a husband and wife is married, and in fact they, through a deeding process, they bring on their adult children for that purpose of basically ensuring that the property will go to the child or the children in lieu of having to go to probate to make that same determination in the process. It does not preclude people from continuing to use the property as they see fit. The original owners, in this case the husband and wife, they can use the property, they can sell the property, they can fix the property up, they can do whatever they want to do. But at the time that they cease to have an interest in it, normally through death, it would then move to whomever else that they identified in that process. So there's some things to be aware of. As an example, some of the cons to doing this is that if you also have a deed, you want to make sure that the deed and the will, as an example, align, that you didn't give different properties to different people. That creates a conflict. The other thing that I share with seniors that you need to think about when you're in the process of doing this, if you can detach yourself far enough from the issue, is to take an honest to good look at your adult children. Because your children have a very vested interest in your outcome. They may have a financial interest, they may have an interest in the sense of who has to take care of the remaining partner, it's all of those types of things. And I say that, so when you're looking in the context of creating one of these documents, You need to say, do I want both of my kids on there? I want all 3 kids on there? Because the downside is that you may be setting up a scenario in which it creates some sort of conflict after you're gone, and then ultimately can go to lawsuits and all of those types of things. One of the things, and I'd like to have Jane chime in case I'm misspeaking on any of the points. One of the things that we have done through our legal hotline is that we've actually prepared about a 2.5-page summary on Ladybird deeds, and I actually have them over there on the table. So if you'd like to take a look at that, please do so. The bottom line is that if you prepare for the end of life and you prepare for these documents, rule number 1 is find yourself a competent elder law attorney. There's a lot of attorneys out there who practice elder law, but it's not necessarily the right fit. And there's several ways you can find and identify that person. So start there, because there's no 2 people that have the same situation in the same environment. And every individual or couple need to have their legal environment set to their particular needs. Jane?
I agree with everything that you've said. The 2 things that we've seen in the past that Ladybird deeds helped correct is that this idea of trust mills, where you get your postcard in the mail and it says, come for a free lunch. Well, we all know there's no free lunch, right? There's always a hitch. And when you get there, you get sold a $5,000 binder with the same documents that everybody else in the room walks out with. It's not necessarily customized to your situation. In the past, our estate tax threshold had been so low that trusts were a good idea for most people because it helped to avoid some of the estate taxes, it helped to get the assets out to where you wanted to go, it helped to avoid probate on those assets that didn't allow you to name beneficiaries. So that kind of planning is a thing of the past, and it's a good thing because it wasn't really serving people well. But the one thing that a trust can do, among several other things, but there's one good thing that a trust can do, is that it can help pass real estate on to your heirs without having to go through probate. The nice thing about a Ladybird deed is it does the same thing for you without the complication and expense of having a full-blown trust. Now, if you do have a situation where you want that asset to go on to certain people, but maybe those people should not be co-owners. You may not want all 3 of your adult children co-owning this real estate upon your death, because then they're going to have to figure out how to get it sold, who's going to pay the taxes, if you're going to rent it, who's going to take care of being the landlord. You've got 3 owners, and it could really complicate the situation, especially if they don't get along or they've got some mental health issues or drug abuse issues that can really complicate things. So, don't throw trusts out the door, but this is a good way of handling that in a less expensive and less cumbersome way if you don't have those other complications. So trusts were one thing. Another thing is that a lot of times people would come in and they'd say, well, I don't have enough money to do an estate plan, so I just put my daughter's name on this house as a joint owner. That's a really bad thing to do, because then if mom wants to move out of her house and sell her house, she's got to have daughter's authorization. She is an owner on that house if she is she's put on there jointly. And you can't just cancel that. You cannot take it back once it's done. The other person would have to agree to relinquish that. There may be transfer tax or gift tax issues along with that. It's really complicated. So by having the Ladybird deed option, we can avoid having that joint ownership complication arise in estates. The third thing that we use them for is to minimize estate recovery if the person is in a nursing home on long-term care Medicaid. Once that person passes, if they have assets going through probate, the state can make a claim against those assets and recoup part of that money. The Ladybird deed allows that property to pass outside of probate and avoid any creditor's claims, including the state. So that would be the third thing. I do think that they, in most situations, are a good idea, but there's never a blanket statement for any estate planning tool that, you know, yes, this is the way to go. It depends on your circumstances, it depends on your family, it depends on what you want to have done with your assets at the end of your lifetime. These cookie cutter planning is not the way to go. It won't get you where you want to be.
Okay, here's a question for the Adult Protective Services. Can a family member or a faith leader, someone who, if they don't have family or someone working with them, can they call you, if it, even not from law enforcement, if we don't get police reports and they recognize that something's going on, can anyone call on behalf of someone that may not have legal authority?
Yes, anybody can call for anyone. I mean, it could be a stranger on the street. If you have concerns and you have enough information to identify them, I get complaints with no address sometimes. We're going to go out and try to find them and see what's going on.
Okay. Okay, here's another question that's connected with that, with nursing homes. With nursing homes, for those who may not qualify under financial means, that have to then go to Medicaid to get access to being in the nursing homes, is there information from the families that may come from or someone from Adult Protective Services, or even financially, could that nursing home go through someone's financial information to get access to accounts, to have them sign off to get them in? What would be your process to take care of someone so that they're not victimized?
In nursing homes, usually it would be a family member. It would be the person's legal representative. And also the nursing home assists with filling out a Medicaid application when the time comes, if a person is going to be there for long term. So, yes, there is a process.
Okay.
You know, a lot of people go in short term for rehab maybe, and then they may not be able to leave the nursing home because they can't go back home and live alone. So then they end up being there for long term. And if they need to go on Medicaid, eventually, like I said, the family members, the legal representative, or whoever, the P.O.A, the guardian, family members, and the nursing home all get together and kind of make that happen.
So it's someone that's got a verified proof of legal authority
Yes.
in order to make decisions.
Yes.
This goes back over to my question to Megan. If someone who is helping to take care of someone, and maybe a caregiver or a family friend, and they just walk in without that person, asking to be added to their checking and their financial accounts, what is the banking's role?
We would not confirm that they were a member or that their accounts were even with our institution. We don't look up anyone by name. They have to come in with an account number or member number with them. So if they don't have any of that person's information, we don't confirm that they even have their accounts here. So basically, if someone comes in, you know, we would note it that someone had come in for this person, so that if it continues to happen again, we would maybe start to alert the authorities about it.
Okay. We're getting close to wrapping up.
Sorry, I just had two quick questions.
Yes.
One, I wanted to speak to the home care agency, and if we have someone who has a legal guardian appointed to them, the legal guardian hires a home care company to provide 24-hour round-the-clock care because the client has some type of memory impairment and is unable to be at home by themselves. But this client still tries to fight the home care, kick them out of the home, things like that. How do we still be able to get in the door? Do we call out sheriff? Does the sheriff have that authority to let us in the house? Like, what is that process? So I'm gonna speak to this. This happens a lot, like a lot. So we'll have people leave the hospital, make a plan with the hospital. Oh, we're gonna get my mom 24-hour care, and they get out there and they either realize the cost, and they go to pull back on. I'm sorry about that. So we get this a lot where people will either, they'll make this plan with the hospital because they want to get their family member discharged. They're going to tell the hospital, whatever, let's get them home, and then they start to pull back on the caregiving, or the person is uncooperative. If you feel that person is in danger, you're going to make an APS complaint. So there are lots of scenarios where people go home under a 24-hour care plan where I've been able to work around it. We sit down, we make a plan. If they can't afford it, we'll kind of coordinate that and make sure that person's going to stay safe. But the police aren't. I mean, the authority is really not there to say that they're in there. You have to contact us and say, hey, this person is not safe. They're not letting us in. This is why. Obviously they have some sort of diagnosis or they feel like they're physically unsafe, and we're going to go out and check on them and see what the case is and try to make a plan around that. If the issue is finances, we'll try to help them with some services in regards to that. But there's no, it happens a ton where people are just like, I don't want these people in my house. So.
Okay, and so we say we caught APS, and APS has come out, and they are involved. They have identified that this person doesn't have home care. It needs to be 24 hours. Things need to be set in place. You guys leave. We're still there. Client becomes combative, kicks us out the house. Are we just out? Because we're in a situation where obviously this person is a vulnerable person. We can't leave this person because they could go off wandering in the woods, whatever it could be. What, I guess, legal right do we have to be there, if we even do?
Yeah, you don't, and I would hate for you, I get it. It's like you don't want to be liable, but contacting us kind of pulls that off of you guys, and it kind of lets us handle it, because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're imposing upon this person. It can be dangerous. Sometimes
right.
I have clients with mental health issues, they get violent.
That's
so
right.
you do never demand to be in somebody's house as an agency. I wouldn't.
So keep calling you.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, make us do our job.
Okay.
And make the guardian do their job. Because if they have a guardian or someone who's serving under a medical power of attorney, they have the authority to change that person's placement. Not cooperating with home care, and that's placing that person at risk, then the guardian needs to make a change in their placement.
Okay.
Got a couple more questions. I'm going to swing around with my microphone connected to me. Yes.
Karen, you talked about the middleman, the mobile middleman with the router on the road, and you're driving in your car, and you said if you don't have a protected smartphone while you're driving around, it could get picked up. What do you mean a protected smartphone? Just the passcode, or is there another layer of protection that's required?
So you can get the same type of protection that you have on your computer, like McAfee, which is not really, this is being recorded, I won't say that, but you can get those protections for your cell phone also.
And also, if you have Comcast, you can download the Comcast services through your app, through the mobile app, through your service to be on your cell phone, in addition to laptops and other devices that you may have, tablets and other things. Question over here. Let's come over here.
Okay, probably have a question for everybody, but whoever, just jump in. I believe that the laws are not in place at this time in Washtenaw County in Michigan to really help our elderly, especially the ones with Alzheimer's, dementia. People who have a durable power of attorney, there is a legal process before the person that they name. It is just like mental health. And we are not really talking and addressing that factor right now. And when I talked about somebody combating with you, my father as well was the fighter. I had no power until there are two doctors. And when you really think about somebody, what does a child know about their parent? What does anybody know about anybody? So to have two doctors concur to say, yes, the diagnosis is here, that is not an easy task. We are not addressing that on any level, which means what are the laws, and the laws really do need to change. It takes, just like somebody with bipolar, we have to wait until something happens before then we have the two doctors. That is really unfortunate. I have worked with the ombudsman, fortunately, to say we do have a problem, and we are not ready at all to service all of the people who are out with diseases that do need help. So no, we can't protect them right now, in my opinion.
There's so much there to untangle. And I understand your frustration. I work in the system every single day, and I think that there are definitely improvements that can be made. First of all, with the powers of attorney, you've got to start with a good document, okay? If you don't have a document that's drafted with the right provisions in it, you're not going to get anywhere. By Michigan law, you do have to have two doctors' letters to activate a medical power of attorney. Not necessarily so for financial powers of attorney, but medical you do. Sometimes the doctors don't want to get in the middle, especially if they have a feisty patient. Because if they start saying, yeah, we think that you need to have your daughter start making decisions for you, we're going to activate this power of attorney, all of a sudden that patient doesn't want to cooperate with the doctor. So there's a problem inherent in the system there. Going the guardianship route, there's also problems there, because what you're doing is you're taking away that person's rights as an adult in the United States to make their own decisions about where they live and what happens to their body and who they associate with. All of those rights are constitutionally protected rights, and so there has to be a process in order to take those away. The problem that I have with that process, and there's no easy solution to this, and I'm not faulting anybody, but the way that that process is set up, it's an adversarial situation, just like it would be if you had a lawsuit against your neighbor for a tree that fell on your house. You each hire a lawyer, you go in, you have to say nasty things about each other in front of the judge. The judge has to make a decision like that with regard to something that is extremely complicated, involving all kinds of family history and family relationships, personalities, medical information. It is not easy to do. It's not an easy job for the judges, and it's not an easy job for the family to go through. In the end, you may or may not end up with a good decision because of the way that process works. And it takes time, especially, again, if you have a feisty family member who is saying, I don't want a guardian, they can fight that. They have the right to a jury trial. They have the right to have an attorney appointed for them. They can ask for an independent medical exam. There are all kinds of things that can delay that process of getting to a point where you can help that person. It isn't easy, but it is the process that we have right now. It's what we have to work within. And if you have a good advocate for the legal system, you can get through it with, without as much difficulty as you would be handling it yourself. A lot of times family members want to try that themselves. The one thing that I really encourage people to do, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, is to use alternative dispute resolution. Ask for a good mediator. Ask for an evaluation by a geriatric care manager, something to help kind of move people off the mark about what they think needs to happen for that person or what that person thinks should happen for themselves. There are some creative ways of being able to make it a little easier.
It's just important to know she touched on something really good, which is that you're essentially taking away somebody's legal right to be themselves and make their own decisions. So I think you have to go into it, especially I deal with a lot of people where it's like too late, right? They don't have these beautiful power of attorney set up or trust wills. They don't have any of this legal documentation. I could say maybe a quarter of my caseload, maybe they might have something on record. So now we're at a point where, you know, my mother is no longer, you know, able to make her own decisions, or she has dementia or something like that, and we have nothing in place. So it is, I think you have to put yourself in a mind frame that it's gonna be complicated, and just kind of instill some patience within yourself, because it's a fight. And the court it doesn't necessarily always get ugly. These judges are usually the judge specifically in Washtenaw County she's kind of seen it all. So they're usually pretty knowledgeable about situations, and I think she has very good discernment about those types of things. But it's not a fun process, and it can be contested. Very rarely do I have a guardianship that just kind of goes through and everything goes really well. So I think it really is it's a lot about patience and understanding and learning kind of the whole system as you go along. But you're right, lots of things can be changed, but I don't think they're going to change to make it easier for you to take somebody's rights.
I don't think it's changing someone's rights. I think it's just as a person being bipolar, that when they're in a manic state, that is and it is after there is an action that's help. There is nothing that can be done until after it is not preventative workers, things are happening and it starts promoting legislation to change things. There are many more vulnerable people, young adults with mental diminished, where people see it and they can live and say, oh, I'm fine, well, you're not okay. And there is nobody doing an investigation at that time to see there is a problem.
Right. I'm glad you circled back around to the mental health issues and the bipolar, because there's an entirely different statute that governs what happens when somebody has a mental illness and can't make decisions for themselves. That's a separate whole process and a whole set of laws than what happens for a person who had capacity but becomes incapacitated as an adult. So there's actually 3 statutes, one for developmentally disabled, one for mentally ill, and one for adults who have lost their capacity. And it's not always cut and dry. I mean, we have clients coming in who have, starting with dementia, but they have a borderline personality disorder or some kind of a mental health issue that's been long-standing, and then you add the dementia on top, and it's a really difficult combination.
It's huge. It absolutely is. And let's do this, because I know that I do want to get a comment from Mr. Mackey here, our prosecuting attorney. What you've done is really kind of looked into several different areas of this concern with HIPAA laws and mental health, the personal health, personal ability to make one's decisions and someone not take them away from you. And everyone who was around trying to help is boxed out, recognizing that there's a problem, but you really can't do anything about it. I think Mr. Mackey even addressed this a little bit earlier with the concerns about not enough laws in place. But this is a whole different scenario other than those who are perpetrators of committing crimes and fraud. But this is now getting into that personal area of being able to take away someone's right. What could you address or comment to that as well? With what's this big picture with having these scenarios where adult protective services involved, reports coming from the police departments, but there's still nothing that can be done in her situation? I was on speed dial with Philadelphia, police and fire, because Dad called 911 so much. So I knew those guys, but it was a challenge to get awareness of the systems. How can we help to make sure all of those things that are in place?
And my mother, near the end of her life, was in Pittsfield Township, and we used the resources of Pittsfield Township, and people were great. Speaking to the mental health issues, since it's something we see every day of the year in our office, very controversial, of course. And if you think back to the 70s, early 80s, there were changes in the law, people respecting the rights, individual rights of people who may be mentally ill to live their lives unimpeded. Now, of course, you have to prove that somebody is a danger to them, not just mentally ill, but that because of that, they are a danger to themselves or others. That's interpreted as a fairly immediate danger. So if you are mentally ill, you have the right to just die on the street sometimes. There is a journalist, I can't think of his first name now, last name is Early, who's with the New York Times, was with the New York Times, has a mentally ill son. He wrote a book about the process, and he advocates strongly, and people are paying attention around the country, that maybe if somebody is so mentally ill that they can't function in the world, that they don't have to be in immediate danger. I mean, you shouldn't have the right to just die someplace because you don't have any insight into the problems that you have. And I see that all the time, not just through work, but on the streets of every city. What do we do about that? One thing is, I think we do need a change in that law. Another thing is we have to reinstitute the mental health system in Michigan, which was basically torn apart in the early 1990s. It's about money. And I fully agree. In the legislature, you have to look at what does something cost. But I think a different question on the same topic needs to be asked with everything. What does it cost not to do the right thing? And the fact is, we don't save money as a society by ignoring people, turning the mentally ill out on the street, especially those who wish they were hospitalized. We pay for it in police services, in the health system. Psych ER gets visits, and it's like a quick oil change. You give you a quick look, maybe check the tires, and you're out on the street again, only to come back over and over. We haven't saved any money. We have to have a mental health system.
Mr. Mackey, thank you. And to each of our panelists, Karen from AARP, Ron, each one of you, thank you all so much for being a part of the panel discussion today. Our vendors and our personnel who are here, resource tables, the weather really got us today, but we appreciate each one of you who are here. We got the list that we'll have up. We'll have contact information for each one of our vendors and the agencies who work with all of the resources that we've discussed today. That we will provide from Catholic Social Services, from our Department of Public Safety, and all of my information from Pittsfield. But each one of these individuals, and thank you again so much for being here with us today for 2018 Scams and Fraud. My name's Ritchie Coleman. I'm the Public Safety Community Coordinator for Pittsfield Township's Department of Public Safety. Thank you all so much for those who did brave the weather. And for each one of you who are here, thank you so much for being here today. Watch for more information about these topics and more in the very near future. Be well.